Hey there, and welcome to this presentation. I'm Rickard Hansen, CEO and founder of Weavy. I'm going to start with a brief introduction about our framework, and then after that I'm going to move into a live demo where we can see all the features in action. And finally, I'm actually going to show you how you can embed Weavy into your app. But I'm going to start with a statement, and the statement is that messaging and collaboration is not an app. It's a feature. So that's quite different if you look into the industry overall, right? We have Slack and Teams and so on and so forth. And we're claiming basically the opposite. And we're saying that because we think that collaboration and messaging should be happening within the app, the business app the user is using. Don't switch the context and so on and so forth. And that's the reason Weavy exists. Because Weavy as a framework is what we call a complete white label framework for in-app team messaging and collaboration. And the goal with adding Weavy to your app or any app is that it will boost the user's productivity. So talking about your users, right? It's going to boost their productivity. But the actual gain for you as an app developer, it's going to mean that your users are going to spend way more much time in your app than before. Because they can do all their work. They can do secure file sharing, they can do messaging, they can do tasks and whatnot, all that without leaving your app. So your engagement with your users is going to increase significantly. And we can see that across the board with all the clients we're working with today. And the features we're talking about in terms of boosting this productivity, right, are mainly four components that we're adding. It's messaging, it's secure file sharing, it's feeds, like news feeds, and then finally tasks. Let's dive into those different features. Starting with instant messaging. Obviously, you have direct messaging, in between two users within your app. And then you have group messaging within, like you can call it rooms or channels. It's completely up to you. But basically, it's multiple users, right? In the same room, can chit-chat in the background. We also designed the messaging piece as something you can break out and run standalone. Think like Facebook and Facebook Messenger. And this is true both for the desktop, but also for a mobile app. So basically, if you start using our framework today, you'll just fork an existing product of ours, rebrand it, and then you can publish it on the App Store and Google's Play immediately and instantly. We also have support for bots. Like if you already have some bots, you can hook that in. And you can create some very, I would say, rudimentary bots within Weavy as well. And that can be anything as in this sample, like, slash says bot, what's my quota? And then you can have a full-on conversation with your bot. Moving along, we have secure file sharing. And basically, the Weavy feature in itself is just like within quotes a Dropbox. So you can basically have a Dropbox within your app. So instead of having a very simple upload, download kind of a file support you probably have today, you can have a very rich interface where you can upload, edit, do remote editing. You can preview files. We have support for 100 plus different file formats and all that stuff, good stuff you can have within your app. And apart from that, of course, we are integrating as well with Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, and OneDrive. So it essentially means like you can pull in files from all those different vendors into your app in a specific file view, which is insanely powerful for your users. And on top of that, of course, like on document collaborations or run any file, you can pull in people into the conversation, ask for their input, and do comments and all that nice stuff. And when it comes to the storage, like every client we're working with, they always ask, like, so where is these files stored? Your files, your storage. So Weavy is something you actually have on your own, in your own infrastructure, side by side with your own app, which means you're in full control. So if you have compliance or regulations in your industry, not an issue at all, because in this case, you have full control. News feeds, like Facebook news feeds or LinkedIn news feeds. Everyone is accustomed to that right now, and it's a great way of having like kind of a structured conversation with threaded conversations within your app. And you have all the normal stuff like emojis, polls. You can embed YouTube videos, whatnot. You have reactions and you have comments, all that good stuff as a part of the feed. And you can instantly embed that to any view in your app. Tasks is very straightforward, nimble, and to the point. You can add, task delegation. You can have personal to-dos. Like you can add our feature to like the user profile of your users in your app, for example, and then they can have their personal to-dos and whatnot. But all the good stuff around it, like notifications, you can have a team view if you want to do that. And again, totally embedded into any or all the views within your app. So this is kind of the feature set, right? And then in the back end or the background, of course, we have the API and the SDK. So there's like from the top down, you have the client SDK, which is a really smart designed JavaScript library. So you can instantly add Weavy to any part of your app with a minimal amount of coding. If you want to be in even more control, which you always can, you can then dive into the server SDK where you can build like full-on apps and you can create hooks and basically customize every aspect of Weavy. And then the mobile SDK is basically ready to go, standalone apps and components as well. So you can use them, you basically just fork our repositories and then you brand it and do some customizations. And as I mentioned before, you can basically publish it instantly on Apple App Store and Google Play. And then the tenant SDK is to assure your growth, right? We don't care if you have 10 customers or 1 million customers or users. The tenant SDK and the whole Weavy framework is built for scale. And the tenant SDK is helping you with that. So everything here is designed to seamlessly merge into your app. So all those different features, components, you can even use pieces of our framework like notifications. If you want to do push notifications into mobile, you can use our preview file feature within your app. All those different things that is like available in the SDK API you can use as well, combined with our like existing UI. So the benefits with Weavy compared to some other players in the industry, I would say, features. We're the only framework that is like focusing on not just messaging, because that's kind of bread and butter, right? But also collaboration. So it's not just like sending messages back and forth. It's also about collaborating in teams and working with files and so on and so forth. So it's a feature complete framework. Another thing that we're focusing a lot on is the drop-in UI capability, which means basically, okay, sure, you have a really rich API and SDK. It's like the engine and all the cogs and so on and so forth. But we also have like a complete UI and user experience as well that you can tap into and instantly add it to your app. Because we spent a lot of time designing, our widgets and the experience within that as good as possible, so you can harness that instead of developing it on your own. And the third piece is, I would say, security. There is no framework like ours that you can actually have within your own infrastructure. Everything is cloud-based, and you have to reroute or go through like kind of a switchboard in the cloud, which makes you dependent, but also can create some regulations and security issues as well. But in this case, you have it under your full control. Every message, every post, every comment, every file that is created for Weavy, you have in your control. So that was like the brief introduction. So with that said, we're going to move into a live demo. You can see the features in action. So now we're going to do a live demo of the different features we just talked about in Weavy. We're going to do that by showing it in kind of a mock-up app we built. This is actually a tour you can do on your own on our website. Just go to weavy.com/try. And you can do exactly what I'm going to do right now. But let's get started. So here you see, as I mentioned, like a wireframe/mockup app. And we can imagine it is like a CRM or a business intelligence app or an ERP app. Doesn't really matter. Weavy is agnostic anyways. We don't care about your UI, or we don't care about what your app does. We just want to enhance it with the messaging and collaboration features. So the first thing I want to add to this app is messaging. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to add instant messaging. And ta-da! Here we have messaging now as a floating panel. And here you can also see the actual code snippet used to add Weavy to the app. So you can see it's not a lot, like it's one line of code basically. As I mentioned before, it's you can have private conversations one-to-one, or you can have rooms/channels. It's up to you. And here we actually have a Weavy bot that I can chit chat with. So we created a bad joke bot, just to showcase. So let's ask for a bad joke and see what happens. Okay, in Germany, they're preparing for the crisis by stocking up with sausage and cheese. That's the worst case scenario. Pretty bad, right? You can, as I mentioned before, hook in any kind of bot here, right? If you already have something in place, or you can build some pretty simple bots within Weavy, but you can still do it. Moving along, I'm going to showcase feeds. So now let's add a news feed to this particular view. Here now we have like a feed, like you're very accustomed to, like Facebook or LinkedIn. Share posts, files and whatnot. And you can see again the code snippet here, over here, like weavy.space. Again, it's just one line of code. The difference between this and the messenger is basically post, the type. And that's just defining for Weavy. Okay, so let's do a post. So here you can see the Weavy bot again, our first embedded feed, do some comment and ask me for bad jokes too. Sure, we can do that, or I can just go in and like it. And of course I can add a comment to this as well. Pretty cool. And you can see here as well, you can attach files, do polls, and you can embed videos, whatnot up there. Now I want to talk about contextual. So right now we're looking at like a kind of a dashboard, right? The start page. When the real power of Weavy comes to life is when you add it contextually to a specific view. Let's say a customer card or an invoice or a specification or a drawing or a plan for like a building. That's when it really comes to power. So let's switch the view, right? So I'm going to move over to a completely different view. But again, we see the feed feature here, but the feed feature has a different context or content. So this is another conversation I'm having with the bot right now, or my team for that matter. So that is how Weavy operates, right? It attaches itself to a specific unique view in your app, and then you can add the different capabilities we're talking about, in this case, the feeds. And that conversation you have in the feed is now attached to that unique view. So when I revisit, say, a customer 3 months from now, I can see exactly what we talked about and who was talking about it, what kind of files and whatnot that was shared within that team. So it's extremely powerful because you actually have persistent conversation. If you users are leaving your app to do this conversation somewhere else, if in email or Slack or Teams, it means that attachment or that conversation is basically forever lost into a completely different stream or universe. With this added feature into your app, you can allow your users, enable users to do that within your app. Next piece is files. So let's add files. As I mentioned before, this is a really powerful component. We have support for plus 100 different file formats in terms of previewing. You can do remote editing. As I said before, like you can basically create your own Dropbox within your app. So instead of having this simple upload, download kind of a feature most apps have, you can actually now create a really rich file experience. Again, you can see here that it's very straightforward here as well. It's the same kind of line of code. Again, the only difference is type is files. If I click here, you can see the PDF, for example. You can see a preview as like a thumbnail, but by clicking it, you can actually preview the whole document. And again, you can do all this without leaving your app. So this is a PDF, for example. Let's pull up the Word file, and here is like a job description for head of growth. Again, I want to see the one page here as a thumbnail, but by clicking it, I can actually see the whole document. And if I see something I don't like here, like I want to add something to the document, I can just click here to open it in Word in this case. So we have remote editing for any file, basically, as long as you have the application for it. And you can do this as a mobile as well. The mobile experience is exactly the same. So now I can do a change here to this. Let's say I want to just make this red instead. And when I save this now, I'm actually saving it back to the server. So I'm not have to download and upload and whatnot. Now we actually updated a file on the server. So if I go back to the application, I and look at the file again, you can now see that the edit we just did happened. And not only that, you're also going to have versions. So you can roll back to an old versions. It's very, very, like a document management system, a simplified document management system. Apart from that, we have support, of course, for all the major ones. So I can pull in files, say, from, I want to pull in some files from my Dropbox account, then I can do that. Let's see, I want to pull in this case, I'm going to do 2 different PowerPoints, and I'm going to add that. So now you can see we have 4 files, and you can see here's a little icon hovering on top of the PowerPoint icon, which means this is coming from Dropbox. These files are actually stored within the Weavy context, and these files are from the cloud supplier. We also spent some time integrating with Google Drive, so I can actually say I want to create a Google Docs within here. Now let's call it Notes from today, and then add it. And you can see, short, a little bit small maybe, but you can actually work with Google Docs within your application. And there you go. And then you can also see here again in the listing that it now have like a Google Docs file icon on top of it. So now I can, share this, edit it, I can store it, and so on and so forth, all within your app again, right? Moving on with tasks. Let's add tasks to this particular view. You see it's very straightforward and simple, so I can add some tasks. All the tasks has different properties. So you can see here this has a high priority. It's assigned to Pleasant Willow, and it has a comment. So I can actually pull up the comment and see Weavybot is telling me not to forget. So of course I won't. And obviously I can tick them off. I can reorder them and say, like, let's put this in top, and so on and so forth. So it's very simple, but yet powerful. And again, all the different components you're seeing here, the files, the feed, and the test, are specifically attached to this view I have in my app right now. So I can navigate to something else, and then let's say in the next view I only want to use tasks, and then the next view is only going to be files or all of the components. So here you basically see the whole shebangs. We have the messenger, we have the feed, we have the files, and we have the tasks. And all you have to do is using this, code snippets you see here to the right. And how this whole project basically looks like from a coding perspective looks like this. So let's finish it up and show me the code. And here you can see the whole thing. So this is like a hypothetical app I built. So here's 3 views, A, B, and C. A is like I want to add a feed and files. On the B view, I want to do tasks and 2 feeds. In C is basically I want to add instant messaging to my whole app. Start with, I need to, reference to our JavaScript library, and then I need to authenticate and initiate the Weavy component. After that, I can start creating my different apps from Weavy. So in this case, the key here is the unique thing that connects these apps and this content to a specific view within your app. And then I can take that key and I create a new space, we call it in Weavy. The space is then attached to your view in your application. And then you can add apps into that space. In this case, I'm adding a feed and a files app. And what actually ends up in my app is basically just an HTML, identification, or a class identification where it's actually going to show up in your app. So in this case, I created a space, attached that to view in an app, in your app, and then I created 2 things, feed and files, and then showcasing that or showing that in the different portions of your app. Same with the next view. So in this case, I actually want to add 2 feeds, and here again, I'm creating a new key. Again, this unique key is attached to the view in your app, which can be a customer ID or an invoice ID. It doesn't matter as long as it's unique. And then I'm adding, again, the capabilities. In this case, I want tasks, but also 2 feeds. So the difference here is like the key is different when adding a feed 1 and a feed 2. So the key is also important here when you create an app within the space. And then lastly, but not least, I'm going to add the messenger. So then I create a global space, which is basically something that is, on top of the whole application. It's going to be the same everywhere. It doesn't matter if I'm looking at a customer or an invoice, the messenger is always the same. And here now I can see that I'm creating something called global, and then I add the type messenger. And then where it's going to end up here. So then it will show up like this. So that's it. That's like, the features in real time. And here is the very little amount of code you have to do to accomplish what I just did, right? Adding those different features to my app. And as simple as that. I urge you to go to our website and do the tour on your own, and you can see the codes. You can actually copy and paste these code snippets that I just showed you into like a play around project or a development branch you have open. You don't have to sign up or set anything specifically up. You can just go. That's it for me this time. Thank you so much for joining this presentation.